So hey friends, welcome to this week's video. This video is in response to a lot of what people have been asking about the sound differences between these various headphones, and I thought it would be worthwhile to just stack them next to each other. However, to prevent this video from being like 2 hours long and putting in sound samples of the different music, I decided that I'm going to make this more of a guide through the playlist that I'm going to be running through and tell you guys what to look for in each song, as well as what I think about how they compare to each other. I'll just basically record these headphones individually through the 7-song playlist and upload separate videos, because I think that's a better representation of you guys getting an understanding of how the sound signature sounds like, and then you can just swap between the videos to hear them side by side. Just by putting them inside this video, I don't think that they does it proper justice and really gives you a good sense of of comparison at least. Another thing to note here is there's 4 headphones on this table, yet we're not going to be going over the Neurophones. And I'm sorry, I know some of you guys have been asking for that, but halfway through this review, one side died. So since these are, I think my pair's like 3 or 4 years old, I'm not going to be able to get a quick replacement. So I'd probably have to buy a brand new pair. I just have to think if I want to do that or not. But yeah, so these are out of the table. But even just focusing on these things, they're just things that you should know of. They all have kind of different codecs available to them. And since we are using Amazon as our streaming platform, we will have available Ultra HD CD quality like music, so high amount of data passing through these, and they all have different codecs that will be available to them. So the Sennheisers will be AAC as their maximum codec, while the Pandas and the XM4s will be LDAC. For the neural loops, it was aptX HD, but since we can't do that, it doesn't really matter. If you guys have questions about each of these headphones, I have done a review on each of these headphones, including the neural loops that I threw. The only one I don't have is the XM4. There's just a lot of reviews out there that you guys can check. I'm trying to concept how to make mine a little bit different, but it is not sonically on par with the Pandas, the Sennheisers, or the neural loops. It is more of like a, it's technologically advanced and very good for what its purpose is. It's just not going to be audiophilically matching these other ones. And again, I don't know if that's a word, but it sounded good as I was saying it. But yeah, at some point there will be a review around that one. In terms of how we're going to be proceeding with this, again, we're focusing on Bluetooth because I want to make sure that we test the different codecs there. And I will be driving it off my phone, which will be at 75%. The onboard volume, if they do have separate volumes like the neural loops and the Sonys and the Pandas, I will be maxing those out to 100, and then onboard on my phone will be 75%. The Sennheisers, they're in sync, so there's no separate volume control, but 75% is what we'll be running these at. So yeah, I think that should get over the basics of how this test will be going forward. And I have my notebook here to take notes as I'm gonna sit here for the next 2 hours and listen to this music for y'all. So get ready. The first song is gonna be, I think, Such Small Spaces by Louis Del Mar. The things to think about when you're listening through these tracks, or at least this track, is that there is a lot of percussion, and it's kind of complicated. There's just a lot of stuff going on, so headphones tend to get a little bit muddy. So really look for the clarity of how that snare comes in, and as they start layering on the drums, how that separation is rendered to you. Because they do like start off very simple with just like hits, and then it just adds on and layers on those drums, and it gets super, super complex. But with good headphones, it's amazing. And they do have like separation between the ears, so your left and right, they tune that song so that it's binaural. So if you have good headphones, you can kind of hear that separation. So look for the separation between your ears, as well as the separation of the drums as they start layering onto it. The vocals, I mean, he's not the most powerful singer, but it is very interesting how he sings. But just see how it balances out with the drums and make sure that he doesn't get overpowered. But those are the main things that I would say you should look for in terms of the clarity of this track. So let's go. So Such Small Spaces, that was actually interesting. They all performed very differently. Let's start with the one I didn't like the most. So to make this simple, or like very, very even, I turned off all ANC and put the best settings that were available to the headphones to maximize sound quality. So for the Sonys, I activated DSEE. I focused on sound quality over connection, and I made sure that there was no ANC on. Overall, I thought it was muddy. The bass was really, really muddy throughout the whole thing. And again, this is a more complicated song to render, so it's not as easy to get on headphones, so I can see the struggle there. But like, it was a little bit nauseating. And I mean, it did punch, but it just wasn't very clean, and there wasn't very good separation. The instruments were very close to each other, and I couldn't like derive different sounds as much as I could with the other two. And what do you call it? That last note was like nauseating. So there's a really harsh note at the very end to listen for, and it's hard for all these headphones to do, but like it was especially nauseating on the Sonys. But there was a nice vocal sparkle that I did notice. So they did really pretty well on the trebles on there, especially with his light voice in the beginning. Between the Sennheisers and the Pandas, they both did a really good job of separation. And I want to say that the Sennheisers did slightly better. There is something about the Sennheisers for this song particularly where I could separate things out from a distance perspective. Like I could, like when one drum was introduced, I could tell like one was here, and I could just sound like one was like here and a little bit further. So it's better to, like, in my brain at least, kind of get a sense of where that drum came from. So there's better spatial understanding on that than I did on the Pandas. And it also just had that, it had a more open feeling. Like, and it's like more like I got plopped in the middle of a band jamming out rather than just like sitting there in front and everything's kind of blending. However, I will say that as things kind of stacked together, the Pandas did a better job at overall rendering and blending the instruments together more. And it stayed more balanced and clean throughout the entire track, even as it got harsh towards the end, and there's just all those crazy tones at the end. This was more consistent and a little bit more clean in there. However, if I was going to pick amongst the three, I would say that the Sennheisers did the best about capturing the feeling of the song, as well as the separation in the track. Like, as I mentioned, in what you're looking for is the separation of the drums, the layering as it comes through, and the binaural experience that I think that he's trying to maximize in this song. So I think that the Sennheisers do the best there. And I think the other reason why I did is, like, in the beginning, when he's doing the ooh, like, the whole, like, all of that was just eerily good. Like, it was just eerily good sparkle on that, and it just captured the feeling of the song more toward me. So these are very close in terms of what you're looking for, but I think the Sennheisers for this song kicked it pretty hard on that one. So Sennheisers for the first track. So the next song is Rodrigo y Gabriela. It's a Spanish duo, Spanish guitars. Their song Gamma State, I think it's an Amazon exclusive. But yeah, it has a lot of complexities to it. Starts off pretty slow, then they start building up momentum towards the end. So the things to really understand is, can you kind of pick out the different instrument styles of the two different players, as well as how clean are the plucks and the percussive pieces. Do they blend well? Do they separate well when they need to? As well as there's a part, I think around like the 320 mark, where there is a like kind of a riff that is supposed to be striking. It does this sort of binaural pattern across the ears, and that's just something to see how you feel about it. But those are the things that kind of struck out to me about this song. So let's get into the analysis. All right, guys. So for Gamma State, it was a little bit different. So since I just listened to the Sonys, let's start with that. So the percussive hits in the beginning were a little bit harsh to me. Every time he hit the string to make a percussive noise, it was a little bit rough on the ears. The bass did seem a little bit more pronounced. That doesn't mean it's clear. Throughout the whole thing, I felt like the bass was a little bit muddy, and even the mids were a bit muddy to me. So all the backup guitar stuff was a little bit unimpressive in that front. The high notes, the high plucking, that was happening throughout the end. Like, even in the mid plucking kind of was annoying, but the high plucking was very clear to me, and it had a good sort of staying power. So I kind of liked how that rendered. And yeah, like, it was weird because I thought it resolved better towards the end. So like, as the song went on, and maybe it's just acclimating to how that sound signature was, but it did sound very good towards the end. It's just in the beginning, in the middle, it was a little bit muddy and harsh with Rodrigo's part. So, I mean, sorry, Gabriela's part. Yeah. Yeah, that's for the Sonys. In terms of the Pandas, I thought that those plucks were beautiful. Like, I could literally hear every note clearly, and it's almost like I could almost see their strumming patterns and their plucking patterns, because I could hear like the fingers sliding across the notes, like if they were going up and down the frets, and it was just very pleasant to me. I felt like everything was really accurate, and I could tell the sort of difference in their style of how they play a little bit better. Like I just got a little bit more emotion out of it. And especially as you hit that like solo at 320, I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like I'm pretty sure I bit my finger at that moment, but it was amazing. I loved that. And it just, the overall sound was like, I was sitting there with them. So it was nicely separated, but it had a nice intimate feel. Like we were hanging out and they were playing their jam. So I like the way that it was rendered to the Pandas overall. The Sennheisers, again, they're doing really good on this sort of spatial separation of like being able to pick it at a certain distance. I think that's just something that Sennheiser's starting to do really well across these tracks so far. However, I felt like it was a little bit not as impressive as the last track. So the strings were a little bit more muffled to me, and it wasn't as crisp as I would say that the Pandas were. The soloing sounded better than the percussive portions of it, and the low strings just didn't do anything for me. Like they didn't give me that thump, they didn't give me that sort of fill like they did on the Pandas, but the plucking and the soloing was still pretty solid. I also felt like this, I guess it just didn't capture the emotion of the song as much. The build-up didn't seem as dramatic as the other two headphones. Like as it was leading up to that solo, I just felt like the drama of the sound was better captured in the Pandas and the Sonys. It was kind of very level throughout the whole thing on the Sennheisers. So that's what my overall feel is. To me, the Pandas did the best rendering overall for this. So yeah, that's how I feel. Oh, they just shut off. But yeah, let's get into the next song. I think the next song is what? Let's see. So the next song is, I'm going to mess this up, and I don't know why I did this to myself, but the next song is Skiptir Ekki Mali. It's by Dadi Freyr, and it's like an artist that I found recently through a meme, but he's an Icelandic artist, and he has a unique style about him, I guess. It's weird because he's kind of like Icelandic Tamish, and I don't know, like it just has that kind of vibe to him. But I like this song because the chorus slaps. Like I don't know what he's saying, but the chorus slaps. Like it's so funky. I like it. So there's nothing like special. I don't think I've like there's no like special like notes or strings or anything crazy that you should look for. It's a relatively neutral track. That they're not doing anything crazy with how they tuned it. There's no binaural stuff. It's just the chorus slaps. So just look for the chorus slapping and how you feel about it, because it's more about a feel on this one rather than like some technical aspects of the song. So let's get into it. I'm not even gonna try to say the song, the Dadi Freyr song. Yeah. So let's talk about this. So this is where the Sonys surprised me a little bit, and it's not because of the accuracy, because I think we've known that, like, again, it's not their strong point. They are very middle of the range in terms of sound. However, it's chill on this song. It's chill. It's super passable. I could listen to this song like easy, probably his whole discography easy through the Sonys. I think it is more bass pronounced, but they do a good job about like maintaining the vibe. It's super good on his voice. Like it was very good for his style of singing, and it didn't overpower it at all. The bass was solid through most of the track. I think it was a little bit overpowering in the chorus at certain instances. So his voice got a little bit lost. But that's the same thing with the Sennheisers. So the intro. This is something that I'm starting to notice as a trend for the Sennheisers, is that like if you have like a cappella or sort of just like layered voices coming through, it's like very nice and eerie. Like it has that good like vibe of like it just strikes you. And that was the first thing when I started off with the track where he's acapelling whatever he's saying, but it was dope. And then when the bass got introduced, it was is very, very nice. Like I was like, that came in lit. Like that came out super, super dope, and I liked it. Throughout, his voice was pretty clear, especially in the parts that were not the chorus. However, in the chorus, he kind of lost his voice a bit, so the bass kind of overpowered it, and even overpowered some of the higher strings in the track. Overall, it almost sounded clinically good. So like, I don't know if you guys like I guess that this is known like for like cameras, like you have a clinically perfect image, so sharp, so perfect accurate correction, but it may not be good for like portraits, right? Because you kind of want an artsy sort of flavor to it. So some people get like artsy lenses that are more vintage. It's sort of like that, where like Sennheiser did a good job at replicating the sound that was intended, but there's just no vibe to it. So like it kind of felt soulless, but it was very, very accurate. And there's really some really good parts in there. But I think that was just what I felt. It's very, very accurate, not as vibey. However, between the two, the Pandas kind of bridge that gap, because the accuracy is still there, but there's still a strong vibe. And I think that comes down to how that bass hits. So like the bass on this is super accurate. It just doesn't hit as strong. But this one, it hits strong, but it's also extremely accurate. Like you can hear the plucks, you can hear the slaps, and it's just super nice. Like you hear the grunge of it all, and it's great. I think overall it was the most balanced. Like, so no matter if you're in the chorus or a verse or any part of that song, I didn't ever feel like his voice was getting lost in the mix, but all of the instruments still maintained their power throughout. So I thought that was great. But yeah, like, so like, you know, in the beginning when I was talking about the acapellas for this guy, for the Pandas, it was still just as nice. It's just, again, the separation of distance isn't as much present in the Pandas, but it's still there. I can still hear everybody's voice in that intro part. But when the bass came in, it has like big boy bass. That wasn't just like, oh, bass came in, it's dope. And like I saw this one was like, I was like, yo, that's like coming in intimidating. Like yo, like I don't know if you've seen the Pikachu meme, but it's just like Jack Pikachu doing this. Like that's how that bass came into me on that track. And like, yo, yeah, Pandas killed it on this one though. Like I think it strikes a good balance between the two. But yo, the Pandas, it sounds amazing on the Pandas. So yeah. Next track. What's the next track, guys? Let's see. Ooh, okay. So J.Balvin, Bad Bunny, and Mr. Eazi, Como Bebe. This is gonna be another vibe track. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. Like, I think I just added this for a little bit change in pace, so it's not all just like super instrumental. It's kind of a more of like a classic reggaeton poppy flavor. So yeah, there's some strong bass in this one, obviously, and then just check out the separation and make sure it doesn't get too muddy. That's what I would look for in this track. All right, Bad Bunny. These did all right. I think they all did pretty well. I think it's more mainstream kind of vibe, so that's the reason why they all sound good. However, Sennheiser's like main advantage so far is kind of screwed them on this one. So because of that sort of separation, and I guess that just like that off-ear feel that these give, everything kind of just felt a little bit distant. So it just didn't give a vibe. Like it's chill, it sounds good, all that sort of stuff. It just felt not very close, and I guess that was strong. That was just hard for me to get a vibe. It was like someone else is having a party and I'm not invited. That's kind of how that felt. The Sonys were more vibey. Again, like they aren't the cleanest sounding, but they are more vibey. But yeah, I think that it just works with the mainstream sound. Like you're not looking for that separation and that technical prowess in mainstream music. So everything kind of being flat and there and present is great. I'm part of the party. Thank you, Sony, for inviting me. But again, the Pandas wreck it. Things that I did not hear in these gave me. Not only are they vibey, and Bad Bunny's voice and J Balvin's voice came out a little bit nicer out of these, but the synth, I did not really feel anything out of the other ones. But when the synth came on this one, it was like fresh water splashing against my face. Like it was so vibey, and it just came in like it was so dope. Like it was something that. The fact that I didn't hear it in the other ones, I was just like, meh, whatever. I didn't even notice it. And then in the Pandas, I got it. I was like, yo. So Pandas win again. But listen to that track on those Pandas. Interesting, super interesting. But yeah, mainstream music, a little bit less to talk about. But let's see what else we got. So the next one is Electric Guess This Head I Hold. This is gonna be super dancey. This band is something I learned over like last year, but I like they have a dope vibe. It's MKBHD approved, and like my friend, she loved this band, and we went out in Minnesota and saw them, and they perform live really well. Like they're some of the best live performance I've seen. They just amp up the crowd greatly, and they have a pretty solid, enthusiastic fan base. So yeah, the things to listen to this are the keys and how they come in, and how the drums kind of amp you up heading into certain parts of the song. His voice is also pretty high, and you just need to see if it ever gets overpowered, because it is a softer but higher voice. And they just have a very funky vibe about them. So sometimes with headphones, he may get overpowered, but you can see if that ends up being the issue here. But yeah, just check for vibe, check for balance, and check how the drums kind of intro different sections of the song, and see how you feel about that. So these ones were interesting. So the Sennheisers, again, they might be doing bad on like dancing music, or maybe it's the mainstream vibe, but it just sounded really subdued. The Sonys did a lot better job. In fact, the drums were like, yo. The drums were like, yo. Especially in the beginning, I was like, this is dope. They had better vocals. They just felt more pronounced, and especially with his voice, I feel like you need to be more forward on him, just because it could get lost. But again, common issue with the Sonys they are muddy bass, and I know a lot of you are like, oh, you can tune it, but I'm trying to keep this as neutral as possible. Like out of the box, this is what it sounds like. I know you can tune up to be treble focused, but even when I did that as a short test, it didn't help with the muddiness. Again, like it'll help make the treble more present, but it's not going to clean up the accuracy of that bass. So it's just a little bit muddy to me, and it overpowered him at points. But his vocals were more clear and present than I guess the Sennheisers were. Surprisingly, like the Sennheisers just felt far. Like they weren't like there was separation in the instruments like they normally do. It was just they were flatter. Like everything was at the same distance, just far. So yeah, it kind of made it seem like he was whispering rather than singing. Yeah, there's like a chime synth in there, and it just didn't come forward as much. On the Pandas, again, very clear bass. That chime synth is very present, and it has that like nice little vibe to it. I don't know, I keep on saying eerie, but it's just cool. Like it's like a wind chime. It's kind of like has that kind of vibe. But yeah, like the layering was beautiful. I think it was really good for his voice. It didn't get him lost at any point. And the drums were super punchy. Like again, like on the initial listen, I didn't get it like I did with the Sonys, but they were still punchy and clean. And then the bass lines were also clean and didn't kill his voice. So I think that was good. So overall, I'm gonna go with the Pandas as the most reliable sound on that. But the Sonys have a vibe. So that was my meet your need. Let's see. Next track would be. Yeah, so the next song is a little bit of like 90s summer throwback on R&B front. One of my favorite artists that I found in quarantine was Sophie Marks. She has a wonderful voice. I freaking love her shit. So check her out on Instagram and YouTube. She has great covers. Her Ariana Grande cover was dope. Like she stripped down that really dancey beat and into something that's a little bit more intimate sounding, and it sounds dope. And her voice is amazing. So check her stuff out. But this song Serendipity is one of her own, and it really is just that, like I said, 90s summer vibe. There's just a lot of things that are reminiscent to that point for me. So I think from my perspective, the things you should look on is her layering of her voice, because she does have a lot of ad-libs and backup vocals that she performs, and just see how they kind of layer together and they blend, as well as that bass line. It's very simple, but it's very strong. So I could see that it could propose a challenge or maybe overpower her at some points, but it just really depends on your headphone. Hence why we're doing this. But those are the things that you should look over for in Serendipity. But yeah, enjoy her stuff, man. Her stuff dope. I'm going to start off, the Sennheisers were terrible on them. God, not only are they subdued and quiet, but that bass line just wrecked her voice with those Sennheisers. I don't know what it was. It was just all I could hear was just that boom, 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 and I did hear like none of her voice or any of her backups. It just wrecked it. So no, Senny, sorry, that was bad. Don't like it. And then this is kind of where it gets weird. Because normally, like at this point, I think there's been a trend. I think you understand which headphones kind of sound better. So at this point, I would do that whole sort of Kenny Stills thing of like, let's go home. Like, we already know. But, you know, the bass on these ones were super chill. Like, yo, amazing sounding. They had clearer separations, and her backup vocals sounded way better in terms of clarity and being able to hear what's going on. However, I might give it to the Sonys on this one. So the Sonys, I don't know what it is. They were muddy. I could tell they were muddy, but they worked with the vibe, and maybe that's just because it's that sort of 90s bass track that's up there. But yeah, I thought it brought out her voice really nicely. Like it gave that nice sultry feeling to her voice, and it was again that very intimate feel. And I felt it was super balanced. So like her backup vocals didn't shine as much as it did on the Pandas, but it almost worked because like at some points I was like, oh, that backup vocal was a little bit loud, but on the Sonys it was just everything was perfect. So while it wasn't in perfect sound, it was perfect for this song. So again, I guess that kind of comes back to the whole like artistic rendering versus clinically perfect. Sonys did really good in this round, so yeah, I can't just give it up to the Pandas just because it's clear, but dope. Sony won one. Let's see. Last track on this playlist is so that track's gonna be "Bank on It" by Burna Boy. The things to think about this one are the vocal presence as well as the bass blending. There's a strong bass line in here throughout the whole thing. Just need to see how that blends with his voice, as well as there's a nice sort of semi-acapella backup portion at the end. How well that renders. Those are the things that I would say are the most defining characteristics of this song for you to check out with this audio samples. All right, final analysis. Let's go. So Sony, it was kind of overpowering on the bass. It sounded pretty messy, not gonna lie. Overall, the whole song, I didn't like how it sounded. It just sounded a little bit muffled and inaccurate, and it was just hard to listen to on the Sonys. The Sennheisers did it slightly better. It was less messy, but they still had that overpowering, but it wasn't like egregious in terms of like it's annoying to listen to. I could still listen to Bank on It fine. Again, it's just like his vocals kind of got overpowered in a lot of different places in it. But that end vocal a cappella section, beautiful. Like that was just beautifully rendered. Separation, all that. Again, like anything with voice and different parts, Sennheiser's doing it really, really well. And I thought that was the best rendering out of all of this. But I have to give it to the Pandas. They just were a lot more clear on the bass, and his voice was very prominent throughout the whole thing. That bass never had a problem of drowning him out. So I think that's the reason why, is because it's just the most pleasant experience to listen to throughout. It didn't hit the vocals at the end like the Sennheisers did, but it was just, again, most balanced, the most unobtrusive, and it was just very nice to listen to. So just for that fact that like it was strong in all parts, I gotta give it to the Pandas. But yeah, so that's a 7-track review of these headphones. Again, I will be posting the full track samples on separate videos. You gotta give me some time, so it'll probably be, I'll probably release one a day. So I'll probably start with the Sennheiser, since you guys have been asking the most about that, and then do the Pandas, and then do the Sonys. So I'm gonna try to compile all this stuff tonight, but then just schedule the releases over the next few days. So just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, guys, I'm not sure if you noticed in this video, but it got dark. It got dark. So I gotta start editing this stuff and making sure that this is all out. I'm gonna have to send this out tomorrow. Really hope I can still get my return. But yeah, overall, I thought that they all had their own moments of shining, but the Pandas were the most consistent in terms of winning out. Whether that be from clarity or whether they're from balance, I think those are just the safest bet. Again, these all have their own sort of ways of shining or being useful for. So like for separation and clear vocals and, you know, things like that. Especially if you want like distance focusing on different instruments, definitely the Sennheiser. If you're looking for like, if you listen to a lot of mainstream, I think the Sonys will get you there for most of the time. They're just a little bit muddy. You can tune it. Obviously, you're gonna have to play around with the equalizer a little bit more. But yeah, like most technologically advanced from a like features perspective. But yeah, sonically just doesn't have as much character as the other ones. And then Panda's, you know, for what you get for $400 without spending $1,000 on those Andas, like pretty solid performance from a Bluetooth audiophile perspective. So that's kind of where we stand. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this is a longer format and it's a lot more, you know, nuanced because you guys can't hear everything right now. But I hope you enjoyed this format. I kind of had fun like shooting this stuff and being a little bit more in depth and getting into the music more rather than just making something that is like visually entertaining. But if you guys like this format, let me know. For all y'all that are new to this channel, please help me out here by liking, commenting, subscribing, doing all things that you normally do in a video that you like and love. And for all my returning subs, thank you guys. We've been growing pretty well and I've been enjoying this, but I think what I'm trying to do is test out different types of content with you guys just to make sure that we have some variety and it's not just straight up, here's the product, let me shoot it in 84 different ways and then do a voiceover. Like I'm trying to mix up the content a little bit to, you know, keep my own sanity, but also just give you different looks and see what you guys react to. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Otherwise, yeah, I will be posting these full samples soon and there will be other reviews in the coming week. So stick with me. Appreciate you guys. See you soon. Later.